Hello guys, it's Pete from MyJewelryBench.com. Today we're going to discuss a DG3804-2 GMT movement from China, and we're going to look at it and see if it's worth using for a watch movement. Let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about the DG3804 and if it's worth using as a watch movement and a replacement watch or a watch that you're building for yourself. This is a pretty common movement for GMT watches that come from China or Asia. These watches are made in China, they're mass produced, and they seem to be included in a variety of watches that we see today. A lot of Rolex fake lookalikes. And I just wanted to get one and see if it was worth getting. You can see that this is how it's packaged. Comes from the factory, all in this little plastic housing, as do many watches, but of course a little bit lower quality plastic housing. Let's open this up and see what we got inside. Okay, so we get the cover off. Let's take the movement out, and you can see we've got a GMT movement with the GMT hack on it. It also comes with the hour wheel lock so that it doesn't fall off. And the first thing I want to do is remove the flywheel, the auto winder, and just take a look and see how everything looks under the microscope and see if it needs to be oiled just a little bit. The watch is very clean, so I will give it that. You have a 3-position crown, so you got your winding position, your date set. So we should be able to turn that and set the date. And it sets okay. It's got a little bit of click to it, but you know, not like you would see on a Swiss watch. And then we have the 3rd position, which is setting the time. If we move the crown counterclockwise, we actually set the time forward. So I'm just going to turn this, and we'll just make sure that the date function changes. There it goes. Okay, so that would be the midnight position. I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to take this flywheel off. I'm going to grab a screwdriver here. And we will undo the screw on the flywheel. Grab the tweezers. Put that in our parts tray. And if we take a closer look, that all we have here is just a keyed flywheel for winding. And if we look closely, we can see that the auto winder here is keyed on one side and held in by one screw. It is a bearing system, so that'll have to remain clean. And so far so good. If I just turn this a little bit, we should see that it's winding properly. Looks like it only winds in one direction. Come on, turn. Yep, it winds in one direction only, not both directions. And we even have a hack on this, so if I pull this out, so I'm going to have to look at this under the microscope and take a look and see why that hack doesn't work very good, but it does stop. When it wants to. So you can see there's our first issue with the GMT movement. Good. This does come with the dial spacer. So we do have a dial washer included and the dial spacer that protects the date ring from rubbing against the underside of the dial. Almost every watch comes with that. Any good quality watch will come with that. Okay, so before I go take a look at that hack, I'm just going to go show you one thing that disturbs me a little bit, and that's common with these inexpensive Chinese watch movements. I'll move that out of the way. I'm going to show you, this is the screw that holds down the winding weight, or the flywheel that winds the watch automatically. You can see that it is a very shallow thread on that, and what scares me about movements like this, and very common with Chinese watch movements, is these screws are very delicate. If the watch takes a drop, it will almost always break. But, you know, for the most part, you just have to keep that in mind. Again, these watches, you can get them, and I'll put links below where you can get them. You can get them on eBay. You can get them on AliExpress. And they range in price from about $35 to $60, depending on where you purchase them. So just keep that in mind when you are buying it. You know, I would say that while it's a decent watch, we've got some issues here with the escapement very close to the side. Obviously, this watch doesn't hack well, so we're going to have to get in there and adjust the hack. And that's going to require me to take the balance wheel off, which is not a big deal. So let's get in there and fix that hack. Okay, so I've adjusted that hack just a little bit. It's not much better than it was, but it's still there. I want to point out some things that I like and don't like about this particular movement. So let's take a look at what we have here. We have blued stainless steel. Well, actually, these are blued steel screws on the watch. They are not stainless steel, which means that this watch is going to be subject to rusting if it should get wet. So you want to really be careful when you put this into a movement. You want to make sure that your movement is pretty water resistant or watertight. And you might want to check it and test it to make sure. The second thing we have is multiple points for oiling, which are good. We have all our exposed points for oiling here, and the points for oiling on the dial side. There's only one exposed, if I'm not mistaken. If I look at that right there. So here's the only point under the dial that we can oil without dismantling the entire watch. So you're going to have to keep that in mind also. You would have to take out the cover and then expose the entire setting system to get access to the oil points. All of the hands except for the GMT wheel and our wheel are tight in place, which is pretty good. We also have two decent mounting points for the dial too. So here's our first, and here is our second for our dial feet. The dial feet, you'll use the positions on the dial at the 6 o'clock, well, 5:30, and the 11 o'clock position. So depending on the dial that you use for this particular movement. Let's see here, we have our GMT ring at the bottom. Above that is the hour wheel, then the minute pinion, and then if we look closely, you can see where the second hand attaches. So again, we have GMT right here. This blue wheel is our hour wheel right there. Then we have the minute pinion and the second hand pinion. Let's see, on this we have our setting gears, which are articulated to work in one direction, and we have our hack for our GMT right there along with the GMT wheel. So all of that is in place and working good. We have a brass balance wheel with brass gears, steel pinions, and steel staffs, which is pretty reasonable. So again, I'm looking at these screws, and we look at all the blue steel screws. Those are just not the best screws. They do break easy. That's a problem. Getting to our oil points under the setting dial or setting ring, unfortunately, this all has to be disassembled to get to. And one thing I do like about it, both upper and lower balance jewels are shock resistant, which means that if we look closely, let me focus in here, we have a shock resistant clip on the bottom, the lower balance, and the upper balance. Right there. So that's nice in itself. So if it does take a drop, at least we know the balance wheel is protected. I also like to see the escape wheel with a shock resistant jewel on it, but that is mostly higher end watches. Even some of the ETA and ISA movements do not do that, but it also helps because that's a rough piece sometimes. And now I'm just going to hook this up to my timer and see where it comes in at. So I want to put you guys on hold and I'll be right back. So I've got this on the timing machine. It's laying on my sensor here. And if I just take you guys over to the computer here, we can see it is running about 1.5 minutes fast a day, but I think that's just because I screwed it up. So I'm going to reset that. We will test this out. So out of the box, I'm getting roughly 4 seconds a day, and it looks like it's running about 4 seconds fast. That's not relatively bad for cheap movement. I'm going to see if I can get this a little bit better. Let's take a look and see, after played with that setting, where we end up. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get this watch. I don't think it's that bad. 2 seconds a day on a $35 watch movement. I'm not complaining. Even if it gets to 5 seconds, I'm not going to complain about that. It is a mechanical watch, so it's going to have some errors in it anyhow, especially because it's not the highest quality manufacturing. But that looks impressive. Okay, so all in all, what do I think about this particular movement? It's not a bad watch movement. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not the greatest watch movement in the world. Quality could be a whole lot better. It does wind good. It's a decent spring. I will put this in a watch movement and give this a test. I'll wear it for a couple of days and see how well it runs. It's 28.8 beats per hour. So 28,800 beats per hour. That's a decent running watch. Looks like I've got this adjusted down to about 2 seconds, which even for me on a cheap Chinese watch movement is very good. Now, the reason that you would use a movement like this in a watch, you know, if you're looking to make yourself an inexpensive automatic watch, that's a reason. And you wanted a GMT. So, you know, the GMT movement, let's say you spent $45 on a movement, which seems to be the average for this. You can spend about $10 on hands, $15 on a dial, maybe less, and get yourself a decent case and band for about $60, $70. And for under $130, you've got a GMT watch that, you know, change the gaskets on that case, make sure you test the waterproofing, and if it all tests well, you could be in good shape. So overall, I'm not a great fan of these movements, but they do work well, and I will let you know over time what I think about their durability. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of these, please let me know in the description below. And if you are thinking about getting these, check out the links below to purchase these online. Thanks. Take care.